Hi everybody, it's Miss Lorenz here. I'm going to talk about 2.9 for 8th grade math. We are talking about slope-intercept form, which is our y equals mx plus b form. Remember the m part of our slope-intercept form is our slope, and our b portion is our y-intercept. So we have some examples to look at and some things to talk about. We will do just this section and then a superset over just 2.9. First of all, before we get to some problems, I want to just remind you of 4 different ways that we look at slope. So remember, our m is our slope, and it's just simply the change in y over the change in x. And so in this example, as we go over on the x, the y is also going up. So as we go over, we're going up, so that is a positive slope. And that's what we call that, a positive slope. It's also possible to have a negative slope. And this is where, as we go left on the x, our y's are going down. And so in this case, we have a negative slope. And then it's also possible to have a zero slope. A zero slope is simply a horizontal line. And it's also something that you're going to see as a vertical line. Now, there is no slope to a vertical line. That's actually called an undefined slope. In math, we use that term undefined. But just remember, these are the 3 types of slopes that we will typically look at: positive slope, negative slope, or a zero slope. And if you see a line that's vertical, we just consider that undefined. All right, so I just drew a line here, and I want to use it as an example. So you can see that I put a point at positive 2 right here on the y, so it's a 0, 2. My point is 0, 2. And then I also put a point at 4, 0. And it really only takes 2 points to make a line, so I put those 2 points on my table, and then I put those 2 points on my graph, and then I connected the line. This is going to help me to find the slope. So I'm going to do that little stair-step method to help us find the slope. And so again, we want to find what is the change in y over what is the change in x. So look at the change in y. The y is going from 0 to 2, right? So that's a change of 2. What's the change in x? Well, I'm going this direction. I'm going sort of like from 4 to 0, right? Which is 4. And since I'm going down, my slope is negative. So I'm looking at a change of negative 2/4 or negative 1/2. So if I was to write this as an equation, I would say y equals negative 1/2 x, because that is my slope, right? I determined that that is the slope. Plus, where does it cross the y-axis? That's my y-intercept. So I look back over here, I can see that it crosses the y-axis at 2 on the y. So there is the equation for that line. All right, let's do another one. We have to graph this line, 1/3 x minus 5. So this tells me that for every 1 I go up, I go over 3. So it might help you when you graph the line, if you're given an equation to graph the line, it might help you to make a table of values first, because these just become our coordinate points. So that's what I like to do. So I'm going to start at 0. I always like to start at 0 on the x. And since we're subtracting 5 from our 1/3 x, I know that my first point, sort of like our starting point, but where it's crossing our y-axis, is at negative 5. So I go over 0 down to negative 5, and I put a point. Check. I'm going to go ahead and put at least one more point on here. I like to add maybe 3, but you only really have to have 2. So I'm going to say, well, what happens when x is 3? Notice I'm not going to 1. I'm going to just jump all the way to 3. And that's okay, as long as it will fit on my graph. I'm good to go. So if x is 3, then y is negative 4. So I'm going to go over to 3, down to negative 4, place a point. Now I have enough to make a line. And that's all I want to be able to do. So now that I have enough to make a line, I'm going to go ahead and draw the line. I'm going to look at the change in y over the change in x. Well, I can see that my y change is just 1. And if you're looking at this and saying, oh, Miss Lorenz, that looks like 2, it's because I counted by halves. So it's really just a change of 1. And then my change in x is 3. And so I know my slope is 1/3 x. And then I look at where does it cross? What's my b? Where does it cross the y-axis? So I'm going to add my b. It crosses at -5. So I have 1/3 x plus -5 equals y, which is the exact same thing as what I was asked to graph. So I always want to make sure my equation matches my table, which allows me to match it to my graph. Notice this one is a positive slope. As we go over on our x, we're also going up positively on our y. All right, I hope that helps you guys with 2.9. Make sure you sign up for a superset after 2.9, and we will go from there. Thanks for listening.